From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Back viewers, you're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. On the show today, US President Donald Trump has urged allies to help secure the Strait of Hormuz after Iran shut the vital waterway following US's strikes on it. The European powers have pushed back on deploying warships, prompting Trump to criticize what he called a lukewarm response to protecting a route carrying about 1/5 of global oil. We'll bring you all the details on that.
Also on World DNA, Afghanistan has accused Pakistan of targeting a rehabilitation hospital in Kabul for drug users with an airstrike, marking a dramatic escalation of a conflict that began late last month. Pakistan has dismissed the accusation. Afghanistan says 400 people were killed in that strike. We'll bring you the latest on that front. Let's start with the headlines first.
President Donald Trump says he does not know whether Iran's new leader Mojtaba Khamenei is alive, adds Washington is unclear whom it could negotiate with in Tehran.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says his last contact with US envoy Steve Witkoff occurred before the US attack on Iran, adding that anyone claiming otherwise was intending to mislead oil traders and the public.
US President Donald Trump said he is unhappy with the UK after Prime Minister Keir Starmer stated that Britain would not be drawn into a wider war over Iran.
President Trump says he has asked China to delay his summit with Xi Jinping at the start of April by around a month while he deals with the war in Iran.
Iraq condemns the attacks targeting the U.S. Embassy, a hotel, and an oil field, calling them threats to the nation's security and stability. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani directs security forces to track down and arrest those responsible.
UAE lifts brief airspace closure imposed after the country detected incoming Iranian missiles and drones in another attack targeting Gulf states.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shares another video where he is seen strolling through an outdoor cafe, talking to people as rumors of his death continue to circulate on social media.
Afghanistan says over 400 people have been killed, accusing Pakistan of striking a drug addicts rehabilitation center, a treatment center in Kabul. Pakistan denies deliberately targeting the facility, stating that its operation involved precision strikes on military and terrorist infrastructure.
Asia-Pacific stocks climbed on Tuesday, led by Japan's Nikkei and South Korea's Kospi, as tensions in Iran weighed on markets. On Wall Street, Dow closed up 388 points, S&P 500 rose 1%, and Nasdaq gained 1.2%, with tech shares like Nvidia and Meta driving the rally. Now, the US-Israel war in Iran is now in its third week, and we bring you the latest developments at this hour. As conflict in West Asia continues in its third week, Israel's military has said it has intercepted Iranian missiles heading towards Tel Aviv. Residents have been urged to take shelter as air raid sirens continue to blare across multiple regions.
A new video has surfaced showing the aftermath of a strike in Tehran's Shahrak-e-Gharb district. US and Israeli forces unleashed heavy bombardments on military targets in the Iranian capital as the war continues to spread across multiple fronts.
In Baghdad's Green Zone, a drone strike ignited a fire at the Al Rashid Hotel. According to Iraq's Interior Ministry, no one was injured in the attack. Witnesses saw a fire break out on the roof of the hotel, and a street leading to the hotel was blocked by a large security deployment with firefighters and ambulances present. Iraq's Prime Minister has condemned the attacks, including one on southern oil field, calling them threats to national security and vowing swift justice.
Iraqi security sources say a wave of drone and rocket attacks targeted the US embassy in Baghdad. They described it as the most intense assault since the strikes began, with at least 3 drones and 4 rockets attacking the embassy. One drone reportedly crashed inside the embassy. The attack comes hours after air defenses thwarted a rocket attack on the same embassy.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has declared that Iran has not sought a ceasefire with the U.S., insisting any end to the conflict must guarantee attacks on Iran will not be repeated. Speaking in Tehran, Araghchi accused adversaries of pushing for unconditional surrender and said Iran's opponents are now appealing to the countries they once considered hostile for help in securing the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Ministry, a spokesperson, has blamed joint U.S.-Israeli operations for the current crisis, stressing Iran's willingness to maintain regional ties provided neighboring states do not allow their territory to be used against Iran.
U.S. President Donald Trump said several countries are reluctant to join U.S. efforts to secure the Strait of Hormuz as U.S. wages war against Iran. Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office, Trump claimed that U.S. strikes have decimated Iran's military leadership and warned that nations relying heavily on oil shipments through this strait, such as China, Japan, South Korea, they should be helping the U.S. secure the vital waterway. He added that while he doesn't expect gratitude, he is surprised by their lack of eagerness to assist.
They have no navy. They have no air force.
Well, to discuss more on this, we're now being joined by Elizabeth Laris, adjunct senior fellow at the Pacific Forum, live from Taipei in Taiwan. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. I would like to begin with Trump's statement. He says that he doesn't know whether Moshtaba Khamenei is alive, and Washington is unclear whom it could negotiate with in Tehran. Meanwhile, we have the foreign minister from Iran who's saying that we will not negotiate until they guarantee that there will be no attacks on Iran. How do you look at these comments coming from Trump at the point where he's also ready to attack? He's not happy with how the Europeans are not supporting him in the Strait of Hormuz opening, and now he's saying that he does not know who to negotiate with.
The picture becomes more complicated. Certainly, we have not seen Mohammad Khamenei, in reliably live, video. So there is a question if he's alive. The latest I've been hearing is that he was injured in the attack that killed his father. However, we don't know the extent of the injury. So he could be severely injured, and this is why we're not seeing live coverage of him. And so if Trump really wanted to sit down at a table and engage in diplomacy the way the foreign minister of Iran, says that they should have done, it is kind of tricky. Who is he going to sit down with? The foreign minister? The foreign minister doesn't have ultimate authority. In Iran, it's the supreme leader, the supreme jurist, who is head of the theocracy there. That is the one that the United States would have to talk with. So with that leader being missing, it does rather complicate the picture. However, it doesn't look like either party is ready to sit down and talk negotiations and talk peace talks yet anyway. The problem is there are a lot of forces in and around Tehran. Number one, of course, the Islamic Republican Guard, but the supreme jurist is the head of that. And again, he's missing in action. And then there are other splinter groups that really could prolong this fight for a long time.
Elizabeth, that's a concern that Trump had mentioned earlier as well, that he's unable to speak with Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the late supreme leader, directly, and that has also created problems. That was initially the problem, and I think that's going to persist even with the new leadership in Iran. But at this point, do you find the US largely isolated in this war that was started unilaterally?
Well, the United States is carrying out this war in concert with Israel. So it has, Israel as a partner in this. Certainly,
but NATO or the
Trump
European nations, Australia, Japan, South Korea, how do you see them? Because they've all come out with their statements saying we want to have nothing to do with this.
I think he was certainly expecting more of the Western Europe countries and Australia. And so far, we know Germany, the UK, Greece, Spain have absolutely refused. They like the oil, but they don't want their people to be killed over it, especially since Trump said something about maybe allowing some Russian oil back into Europe. And in Asia, here in Far East Asia, the Middle East is far away. It's not considered to be a top priority for a lot of these nations here. They are looking at North Korea. They're looking at China's aggression in South China Sea and West Philippine Sea. So that's more immediate to them, not what's going on as much. They're not ignoring it, but they're not as focused on the Middle East. And they're going to be reluctant to get involved in the Middle East because they've got their own bugbears in their backyard.
And that being said, of course, these are also countries that will be affected when it comes to Strait of Hormuz. But again, as Shivan just mentioned, the isolation of Trump, because he once asked the Europeans to help him out. Then he warns them that you should, or there's going to be bad things happening to NATO. When that kind of comments come from a U.S. ally, and then we have the Western nations, for example, France or Italy, trying to contact Iran on the back end, there seems to be an isolation from, it's not that it's just the Europeans are doing it, it's Trump who's literally mentioning that we're warning you that bad things will happen to NATO. How do you look at this, behavior, I would say, of Trump's?
How many times do we see European nations saying no to the U.S.? Over to you.
We know that President Trump engages in a lot of hyperbole, right? He said, once he got elected, the Ukraine war would be over in 2 weeks. This war is going to be over in 2 weeks. He uses really outrageous terms. So look more at his, behavior. Of course, he's been very critical of Europe, of NATO defense spending. And so for the Europeans, here comes Trump threatening, bullying, more of the same. But look at his behavior. What can he do about getting those countries to engage in Straits of Hormuz? I don't know what leverage he has, but also this is what we're seeing publicly in front of the cameras. International relations is always at two levels. It's in front of the cameras, and then whatever is going on, negotiations going on behind doors. So all I can say is, this story will continue to evolve, and we'll know more in 15 hours from now than we know right now, and it'll just continue to progress that way.
Elizabeth, at this point, do you feel US, with the support that it has, the gist of Israel, of course they've started it, so they stand together, but can US and Israel force open the Strait of Hormuz on their own?
I believe tactically that would be very difficult. My understanding is if you look at a map, there's an extremely narrow passage, and the territory that belongs to Iran is mountainous right there. And so they could mine it, they could use kamikaze type attacks to get through that to try and prevent ships, from getting through that very narrow point. They've already, laid mines. So I think it would be extremely difficult for the US unilaterally, and even with concert with Israel. Because now Israel's getting much more engaged in Lebanon. And unfortunately for all parties concerned, we have not seen a lot of Israeli success in Lebanon. That story just keeps rehappening. So I think opening Hormuz is going to be very, very difficult. I think there's going to have to be some negotiations first.
And also on the when it comes to the objective of the war, we've seen J.D. Vance flip-flopping on his comments, and then he goes according to Trump. I agree with Trump when he says that Iran should not have nuclear weapons. And there seems to be there's inconsistency, even in the administration, when it comes to the goals of the war. How do you analyze this inconsistency?
I think that J.D. Vance and some others in the administration are responding to what they're hearing from the American people. When President Trump ran for president, he said, no more wars, no forever wars. And here we are. He took out Maduro very quickly. So I think he was felt confident with that. It looks like Cuba might be on the verge of collapse. But, Iran is a sticky wicket. We've been working on this problem for 40 years. But the American people are really divided on this. Most Americans are, I think I can safely say, against this Iran war. There are some very strong Trump supporters that are saying, Iran has been a threat. It's been killing our servicemen. It's been a terrorist state for 40 years. We can't let it have nuclear weapons. It does have ballistic conventional weapons that can be used as well. So it still is a huge threat. But I think, just looking at the polls, a lot of Americans are not really convinced by this. And I believe that's where you're getting the division in the administration.
Elizabeth, let's rewind a little over a month ago, to the beginning of this year. A lot of Trump's inner circle, his military advisors, they all warned him against any kind of a military overture in Iran. He was warned several times because there was a lot of bravado coming in from the US that we're locked and loaded, we're ready to go. That was coming in from the time when the protests were, that violent crackdown on protesters in Iran in the beginning of this year. But at that time, the war never started. He was advised against it. He was told, don't risk it. He's even said now that he's shocked at what Iran did in retaliation, whereas Iran made it very clear, you attack us and we'll go after all your bases in the Gulf. Now, the theocratic regime has not collapsed in Iran either. The supreme leader was eliminated, was neutralized, was assassinated, the way one would like to see it across the world, and then there is a new leader already in place, although not in public yet, but is there very much in, for the sake of it. Now, Strait of Hormuz, it still remains blocked. Is Trump looking for some kind of a symbolic win for an off-ramp here, or is there no off-ramp?
Well, certainly the Pentagon and U.S. Department of Defense, has a strategy, and they have tactics as well. And they have contingency plans for everything. Now, President Trump is commander-in-chief, so he gives the green light, the amber light, the red light. And this is very often a problem with the military saying, this is what we can do. Like you said, he wanted to act sooner when those protests were erupting in Tehran, and was advised that, no, we don't have our suitable assets in place. So he waited. 30,000 people were killed. The people who were brave enough to come out and demonstrate, who's going to risk their neck now? And so, he should not be surprised that the people are not rising up. The people who would have risen up are dead, right? 30,000 of them. And so, the Pentagon can plan as much as they can, but if the president says we move now or we don't move now, then they have to recalibrate. And I think you're seeing a lot of recalibration. The one thing that Trump I believe, is really trying to avoid, and the American people are trying to avoid, and the Pentagon's trying to avoid, is boots on the ground, because there will be very little support for that.
I'll come to the boots on ground point, because that's a major point that, Trump, there's reports saying that. But Elizabeth, just stay with us. We have some breaking news just coming in, and we'll just take your reaction to that. So breaking news coming in, Israeli military has now said that they have started and has launched a wide-scale wave of strikes in the Iranian capital in Tehran.
And this is hours after Israel's military said that missiles were launched from Iran and they were heading towards Israeli territory, calling on people in affected areas to head to shelters. And at the same time, Israeli military has said that it is striking Hezbollah targets in Beirut.
Well, on Monday, Israeli President Isaac Herzog had sought support from Europe in his country's fight against Hezbollah as the Israeli forces carried out ground operations in Lebanon. And now what we know is that Israel has now started its attack on Iran in the capital, Tehran. This is hours after Israel's military said that missiles were launched from Iran that were heading towards its territory, calling it on people in affected areas to head to shelters. Elizabeth, so we know that this whole, retaliatory and then attacks are happening on the ground as of now. It doesn't seem like it's going to abate anytime soon. You talked about the ground, the boots on ground. Now, we have so Axios report had reported that Trump is planning boots on ground in the Karg Island. Now, that is an important island for Iran, not just Iran, but also countries like China. How do you analyze, if at all, the boots on ground does happen? Where does this lead us to? Another escalation?
Well, it leads to a more protracted conflict. Certainly, Karg Island is extremely important as an avenue, like a channel, for Iran's oil getting out. But remember, Iran needs to sell oil for revenue. I know we're quite concerned, about oil prices and gas prices. And, gas prices are high in the United States, but they're not as high as they were in 21 and 22, during COVID. So we're not there yet. But again, like this closing of Hormuz and selling oil, that's making oil available. That's a two-edged sword. Iran's not going to get the revenue if it doesn't sell. Now, it can apparently get oil out to China, but it's like China, I think only buys like 9% maybe of Iran's oil. So that's not like a big windfall, for Iran. So yeah, Karg Island, sure, Trump is trying to strangle Tehran, and Israel is hardening its blows against Tehran. It's making millions of people flee. Who knows where the heck they're going? But this is it's a strangulation, and it's a blow at the same time to bring the regime to its knees, to make it weak enough, theoretically, so the people then can rise up. But the people aren't armed. This is a problem when you have populations that are not armed. What are they going to fight with? How are they going to overthrow the regime? That's that's a question.
Elizabeth, thanks so much for taking all those questions. I understand it's a very perplexing time. Everyone's really trying to understand where this is going, and most of all, partners of the US themselves are asking, give us more clarity on what the eventual plan is. So I can imagine how anybody else can have a better idea at this point. But thanks so much for joining us. There will be more to discuss as this only seems to be extending. That was Elizabeth Laris joining us here on World DNA.
Now, a life-threatening situation is unfolding across U.S. Midwest as a monstrous blizzard bomb cyclone is rapidly intensifying.
And it's unleashed extreme snow and vicious wind gusts. Several states are already seeing major travel impacts from the destructive storm, with thousands of flights facing severe disruptions. More in these next visuals. All right, viewers, this is World DNA. We're slipping into a very short break. Stay with us. Lots more reports coming up on the other side. Afghanistan has accused Pakistan of hitting a treatment center for drug addicts in Kabul, killing civilians. Islamabad has rejected these claims. Details coming up. Stay with us. This is World DNA.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
We don't need oil, but we did it. It's almost, you could say we did it out of habit.
US President Donald Trump suggests US should not have gotten involved in West Asia at all. Said he did it for some very allies in the region as he ramps up pressure on countries to deploy warships in the Strait of Hormuz.
Afghanistan says over 400 people killed, accusing Pakistan of striking a drug addict treatment center in Kabul. Pakistan denies deliberately targeting the facility, stating its operations involved precision strikes on military and terrorist infrastructure.
Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says his last contact with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff occurred before the U.S. attack on Iran, adding that anyone claiming otherwise was intending to mislead oil traders and the public.
Fresh drone and rocket attacks target the US Embassy in Baghdad. Iraqi security forces describe it as the most intense strike since the start of the Israel-US war on Iran.
Iraq condemns the attacks targeting the U.S. Embassy, a hotel, and an oil field, calling them threats to the nation's security and stability. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani directs security forces to track down and arrest those responsible.
The UAE lifts brief airspace closure imposed after the country detected incoming Iranian missiles and drones in another attack targeting Gulf states.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shares another video where he is seen strolling through an outdoor cafe, talking to people, as rumors of his death continue to circulate on social media.
US diesel prices have surged past $5 a gallon, the highest level in years, as West Asia war disrupts global oil shipments. Analysts warn the spike could drive up transportation costs and add fresh pressure on an already fragile global economy.
And well, Afghanistan has accused Pakistan of hitting a treatment center for drug addicts in the capital, Kabul, and killing civilians.
Loud explosions were heard in Kabul. Jets flew overhead on Monday night, and this as anti-aircraft defenses were activated over the Afghan capital. Taliban spokesperson has said that over 400 people were killed. 250 others were injured in this strike that hit the drug rehabilitation center.
In a post on X, spokesperson of Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, Zabihullah Mujahid, said, and I'm quoting, "We strongly condemn this crime and consider such actions to be anti-human acts in violation of all universally accepted principles."
Islamabad has rejected Kabul's claim that it deliberately targeted the facility, adding that it carried out precision airstrikes targeting military and terrorist infrastructure. It also accused Taliban authorities of misreporting on civilian deaths. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has sharply criticized US President Trump, accusing him of killing diplomacy.
And now his response comes following a statement by U.S. President Donald Trump, who said that the United States is in talks with Iran for a deal, even though they are not yet ready for it. Well, Trump made the remark when he was asked whether there were any discussions underway to end the war that has been ongoing for 3 weeks now and has spilled across West Asia. However, he did not elaborate on the details.
But Araghchi's remarks come as a sharp rebuttal to what Trump had said. Taking to social media, he posted, "My last contact with Mr. Witkoff was prior to his employer's decision to kill diplomacy with another illegal military attack on Iran. Any claim to the contrary appears geared solely to mislead oil traders and the public," quote unquote.
Now, Trump had earlier also made similar claims, saying that Iran wanted to make a deal very badly, but he was not sure about it. And following this, Araghchi pushed back against Trump's stance, saying Iran was not interested in talks with the United States. Now, during an interview, he said that Iran sees no reason to negotiate with Washington, accusing U.S. of attacking Iran while talks with the Trump administration were still underway. Well, President Donald Trump has claimed that the United States has obliterated Iran's military capabilities, saying American forces have struck over 7,000 targets across the country since the start of the war.
And this even as he urged other nations, especially in NATO and in the European Union, to join efforts to secure shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. About the US-led campaign against Iran, Trump said that Tehran's Air Force, Tehran's Navy, its air defenses, its command structure, it has been devastated. Listen to this.
Since the beginning of the conflict, we've struck more than 7,000 targets across Iran, and these have been mostly commercial and military targets. We've achieved a 90% reduction in their ballistic missile launches and a 95% reduction in drone attacks.
Now, Trump repeated his call to nations to help unblock the Strait of Hormuz and complained that some were not very enthusiastic about providing help to Washington. Trump wants nations to help police the strait.
After Iran responded to US-Israeli attacks by using drones and missiles of its own to mines to effectively close the channel that is the Strait of Hormuz for tankers that usually transport a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas. Trump also said that the new leader of Iran may have lost his leg, adding that nobody has seen him, which is unusual.
It's not only them, it's you people. I mean, a lot of people are saying that he's badly disfigured. They're saying that he lost his leg, one leg, and he's been hurt very badly. Other people are saying he's dead. Nobody's saying he's 100% healthy.
Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, The late Supreme Leader, he was killed in the initial strikes of the war. Tehran announced his son, Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei, who had been named as his successor, Iran's new leader. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth said last week that the new leader was believed to have been wounded in a strike. Trump said that since Operation Epic Fury began, the US had struck more than 7,000 targets across Iran, targeting both commercial and military sites, and claimed the operation had sharply degraded Tehran's offensive capabilities.
Now, the U.S. president stated that during a past military operation which took place on the 13th of March, the U.S. attacked Iran's Karg Island and destroyed nearly all structures on the island, sparing the oil facilities.
You know, we attacked Karg Island and knocked it literally, destroyed everything on the island except for the area where the oil is. I call it the pipes. We left the pipes. We didn't want to do that, but we will do that. We can do that on 5 minutes notice. It'll be over.
Karg Island, it is central to Iran's oil system since it hosts the main terminal that oversees Iran's oil exports. Roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil exports pass through Karg Island, which has massive storage facilities and loading jetties capable of handling super tankers. Now, despite Trump's repeated call for help to allies, several nations have said on Monday that they had no immediate plans to send ships to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. Germany, Spain, Italy, they were among allies that ruled out participating in any mission in the Gulf, at least not for now.
Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said the Strait of Hormuz is not completely closed amid rising tensions in the region. The Foreign Minister said that the key shipping route remains open to most countries but is restricted for nations that support attacks against Iran.
The West Asia war has continued to disrupt the region, affecting oil supplies, shipping routes, and the broader security situation across several countries.
The skies of Iran are roaring with warplanes and missiles. American and Israeli airstrikes are pounding targets deep inside Iranian territory.
But Tehran has responded with one of its most feared weapons, the Sejil missile. There's more in this next report. Take a look.
Explosions rip across Iranian cities as Israeli and American aircraft pound military sites. Israel and US say their precision strikes hit missile bases, command centers and infrastructure linked to Iran's war effort. For 16 days, the bombardment has intensified as the conflict enters a dangerous new phase.
We have an organized and well-planned war plan. We still have thousands of targets in Iran, and we are identifying more targets every day. The regime is already weakened, and we continue to weaken it more and more every day.
Iran, on the other hand, continues to launch devastating strikes on what it calls our American and Israeli military targets. Iran now signals shifting from trying to overwhelm enemy air defenses with wave after wave of the cheap but deadly Shahid drones. The focus on potential high-impact penetration strikes in which fewer, faster and harder to intercept missiles. Iran claims to have fired its Sejil missile, which it says is unstoppable. The Sejil is a two-stage solid-fuel surface-to-surface medium-range ballistic missile. Iran claims that it has a range of 2,000 kilometers. The 18-meter-long missile can deliver a payload of approximately 700 kilograms. It can achieve a maximum speed up to Mach 4 to Mach 5. Military analysts say the Sejil missile's speed and long range make it a key part of Iran's strategic arsenal, with American and Israeli aircraft striking Iranian territory. Tehran appears determined to demonstrate that it still has powerful tools of retaliation. Each new Iranian barrage is more sophisticated than the last, catching Israeli and American commanders off guard and forcing a desperate scramble for new strategies to counter the incoming projectiles. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
We're stepping into a short break. Coming up, US President Donald Trump has renewed his threats to topple the government in Cuba. We'll get you all the details on the other side.
Welcome back to World DNA. Several members of Iran's women's national football team who sought asylum in Australia are now changing their course.
Well, most have decided to return to Iran despite earlier fears of possible persecution in Iran. Only 2 players are now believed to remain in Australia. The situation began during an AFC Women's Asia Cup in Australia. 7 members of Iran's delegation, 6 players and 1 staff member initially sought asylum in Australia. Australia had granted them humanitarian visas after they expressed fears of possible persecution if they returned home. The concerns emerged after the team reportedly did not sing the national anthem before a tournament match.
The situation has shifted quickly. Australian officials say 5 members of the group have now withdrawn their asylum requests. Among them is team captain Zahra Ghanbari, who is Iran's leading female international goal scorer. They are expected to reunite with the rest of the team in Malaysia before returning to Tehran.
Australia's Assistant Foreign Minister said that the government respects the players' decision. He added that authorities will continue offering support to those who remain in Australia. Home Affairs Minister has said that the players were repeatedly informed about their options, but he acknowledged the decisions are complex given the circumstances they face.
However, the members of the Iranian diaspora and human rights activists have raised concerns. Some believe pressure may have been placed on the players' families in Iran to influence their decision. But these claims remain unverified. Iranian authorities have called their decision a patriotic choice.
And Donald Trump has renewed his threats to topple the government in Cuba, and this as the country plunged into darkness under the total power blackout linked to a crippling oil embargo imposed by Washington.
You know, all my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Trump declined to elaborate when asked whether potential action against Cuba would mirror the approach taken in Iran or Venezuela.
Can't tell you that. I can tell you that they're talking to us. It's a failed nation. They have no money, they have no oil, they have no nothing. They have nice land. They have nice landscape, you know. It's a beautiful island.
As U.S. and Cuban officials negotiate over the future of the Caribbean island, a New York Times report suggests that Trump administration is seeking to push President Miguel Diaz-Canel from power. And according to sources quoted in the report, the move would topple a key figurehead but leave in place a communist government that has ruled Cuba for more than 65 years. The Americans have signaled to Cuban negotiators that the president must go, but are leaving the next steps up to the Cubans.
China's top nuclear weapons scientists have gone under the radar. Names of some scientists have disappeared from the website of Chinese Academy of Engineering.
Now, this is China's one-of-a-kind body for design and research of strategic weapons. The brain behind China's nuclear weapons research, Zhao Shengong's name has been removed from CAE website. However, former CAE vice president's name is still listed in 13 academicians on the website of the Institute of Applied Physics and Computational Mathematics.
Next profile that has been taken down from the CAC website is radar specialist Wu Manjing. Wu has played a pivotal role in the development of KJ-500, which is China's own early warning aircraft currently used by the Chinese Air Force.
Now, third person in the list of removed profile is Wei Yeyin, an expert in missile design and guided missile technology. He was elected as the CAE academician in 2019.
In total, 3 profiles have been taken down and reasons behind the move remain unknown. But the timing raises questions. It comes on the backdrop of Xi Jinping's total loyalty, no corruption mission. In a recently concluded National People's Congress meet, Xi Jinping said modern weaponry and equipment should be placed in the hands of politically committed personnel.
Xi's total loyalty on a no corruption mission is already in motion. More than 20 senior military commanders in China have been investigated, sidelined or removed since mid-2023. The most high-profile names include country's top general Zhang Yuexi and General Liu Zhenli. Well, both men have been accused of alleged corruption and disloyalty.
Generals first and now scientists. Chinese president is reshuffling the country's security apparatus with loyalty and honesty towards Chinese Communist Party at the center of it all.
The Iran war is likely to fuel the de-dollarization trend seen in recent years.
Well, de-dollarization in energy trades is a growing trend, and there is a clear shift in settling oil transactions in currencies other than the US dollar, such as the Chinese yuan, Russian ruble, Indian rupee, or other domestic currencies. In this next report, we decode the oil trades shift away from the dollar in recent years.
Motivated by sanctions, geopolitical shifts, and a desire to reduce American economic influence, countries like China, India, Russia, and some GCC members are now exploring alternatives to the petrodollar system. Although the greenback still remains dominant in the global energy settlements, International Monetary Fund data shows that the usage of dollar in oil trade is now about 57%, down from about 71% in 2000. There is a clear rise in alternative currencies for oil settlements. China has pushed for yuan-based settlements for oil and gas, particularly with the Gulf Cooperation Council nations, and has successfully used the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange for transactions. Beijing also buys 90% of Iran's oil outside the dollar, using the yuan oil trading system. BRICS countries are increasingly bypassing the dollar for energy trade, which has led to a slow erosion of the dollar's role in global transactions. Countries under US sanctions such as Russia and Iran are leading efforts to trade in other currencies to secure energy sales at discounts and reduce financial dependency. Russia now trades with China mostly in yuan and ruble, with the country's dollar reserves almost gone. Iran has turned to crypto and Bitcoin mining to avoid SWIFT sanctions. India, on the other hand, has been buying Russian oil using rupee instead of dollar. Brazil trades with China using yuan instead of dollar. South Africa is working on a BRICS payment system to reduce the dollar use. West Asian countries have started to look beyond the US currency as well. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have started to accept yuan for some oil deals with China. The UAE is testing a new payment system which works without SWIFT. Malaysia is pushing for an Asian fund to move away from the dollar. This is not just a theory or rhetoric anymore. Several countries are already changing the system, and the Iran war may push many more to look beyond the dollar. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
All right, with that, we call a wrap to this bulletin, but don't go anywhere. News and updates will follow on the other side. You're watching WION World this Wednesday.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
The problem with NATO is that
In an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform. WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order.